Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Barry Kostrinsky, president of ATOA, Artists Talk on Art. We're a 501c3. Our history, we started in 1975 and have been presenting in the Lower West Side of New York City from 1975 to about last year. As a result of COVID, we've had to go to this virtual platform, the Zoom platform that we use, and we're now on our 80th talk. Not quite consecutive, it is every Monday, but occasionally we do hit a holiday. So this is really, it's increased our sort of productivity and our collectivity as we have really come together and become a very regular group. And of course, I want to thank all the artists here and everybody participating for really making it what it is. We're a 501c3. We don't charge for any of our talks. If you'd like to contribute, there's information on our website. Our website's atoanyc.org. As well, if you'd like to organize a panel or be part of a panel, there's information there as well. You can reach out to us. We'll send you a form. We are now sort of booking up 2022, and you're all welcome to present ideas for panels or just say, can I be in sort of a mixed panel? Tonight, we have a program that we do every once in a while. We basically let people without much planning and some who reserve a spot go ahead and share about their art for about 10 minutes. So far, we have 4 artists that are going to do so. We have Deborah Ugoretz, Augeri, Marc Josloff, and Susan Kaprov. This is a great opportunity. I think all of our talks have been great and exciting. If you want to see past talks, you can go to our website, and we do have information about talks from this year and last year and the previous 2 years. And we do have a YouTube channel. This talk will end up on our YouTube channel, and you can see it again, or you can see previous talks that you've missed. I want to welcome the artists tonight and welcome all of you. We look forward to an exciting presentation. Deborah, we're going to start with you. I'd ask you just introduce yourselves. Feel free. These are your minutes to share and tell us about your art. I do recommend everybody who doesn't want us to hear what's going on to sort of mute yourself. On the other hand, we encourage questions, and not only questions, but statements. Anything you'd like to say about the artist, to actually do that right in the middle of the talk. And this way we make it more active. If it's a question, it always seems to open up the dialogue more. And as well, if you're more comfortable just typing into the chat, you can type it in and I will read it off at one point. So welcome, Deborah. And thanks for joining us.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, hello. I'm a painter. I paint in acrylics, and I also do work in cut paper, and I make 3-dimensional installations from my cut paper work. And also I love to build small containers or small boxes that have some kind of connection to text that I might be studying. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. I've been living in Brooklyn for about 10 years. Before that, I was living in New Jersey. Okay. So it's very interesting that one of you was talking about Scotland. This is actually a photograph of a rock that I took in Scotland and decided to create a painting based on it. I make the work because I love the act of painting. I'm interested in creating pieces that are infused with unusual color and have some sort of distortion of color usually, and that have some kind of little bit of a Gothic strange feel. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of my pieces, my paintings, and then I'm going to show you, hopefully if there's time, a few of my cut paper works. So I took that photograph and I started with creating this wonderful, it's very large. First of all, it's like 56 inches long by about 40. I made this amazing, I made this very I love working with glazes and started getting really attracted to gold glaze that's made by Benjamin Moore, because I love the sense of moving as you move from right to left or up and down as the light. I love how the light changes and the colors kind of morph. So this is sort of a preliminary sketch. And this is the finished product. It's got lots and lots and lots of layers of glaze. And then I went back into it with very thin paintbrushes, and I just sort of created this sense of mass, basically, on this page. Some of my, and then here's a picture of me painting.
It's great.
Thanks. So this is another example of, I often, if I'm going on trips, I'll take photographs and then I will go through them and somehow hyperize the color. I love like punching up the color using odd color combinations. This is actually from a forest in California. And I used, I just heard about Liquitex acrylic inks. And most of this painting is done with acrylic ink, which I find very creamy and rich and incredibly intense. And I was just struck by the action in this, you know, the sort of the contrast between the blue of the trees and this sort of mysterious dynamic stuff going on behind it. These pieces were all done within the last couple of years. Then I also paint in gouache. These are little paintings. This one is called The Way Beaten. And it's all about sort of what was happening during COVID, that we were living in our apartments or houses and sort of walking the same walk through our apartment and sort of wearing, down our carpets or our wooden floors, and sort of, wearing down this path of repetition. And so I took this photograph a couple of years ago. These are
simply a struggle to hold power.
These are
not necessarily to do anything.
Someone's watching TV.
Marshalling of power.
Anyways, these are gouaches. And again, I'm playing with color. I'm introducing pink into these trees. And the sense of isolation and not knowing whether you're coming or going, where this path is going to lead. This is the second in that series. Also gouache. These are small. These are like 23 inches by 15 inches. This is actually a photograph of Battery Park that I completely changed, took all the buildings out, took the people out, and just wanted to create this sense of light and mystery and where does it lead? It's sort of to the end of the world. And I also, this is a piece I did in, based on a picture in of weeds in island in Italy. This is acrylic. And I just love the creaminess and the speed at which you have to work when you're using acrylic. Just give me a second here. Sam, can you turn off the radio? Thank you. Sorry. So where's my, how can I scroll here? Okay, what happened here? I should be able to.
I'll read some of the comments, Deborah.
Oh, okay.
While you sort of work on that. Eileen Hoffman says, I love the way you capture the light, air, and movement of the trees. It's hard for me to get this name, but it looks like Lethorial Badenhausen says, "This is lovely," even though I may have butchered your name, sorry. Marc Josloff says, "Deborah, the weight of all the elements really becomes important in your paintings, sometimes heavy and sometimes weightless."
That's interesting. I'm going to just stop share for a second and try it again because I don't know why it's not scrolling through.
Yeah, that is a solution. Jenna Lash says, "Feels like a fantasy world." And
Yeah,
let's see, Barbara
that's
Sher,
weird. All right, you know what? I'm going to have to just,
that'll work. You can do them one by
yeah, I'll
one.
just do it that way.
Barbara Sherman says, "You really get the sense of the thousands of years of water rushing by those rocks." She's referring to an earlier image and, to create the shape. So, as usual, it's so nice to hear our group sort of chime in a very positive way. I think a lot of us in the art world know there's not a lot of positivity out there. And as artists, we do reinforce each other when we are kind and share positive thoughts, and it helps us all. So I do appreciate that.
Yeah, so do I. So this painting was made a couple of years ago when I was sitting and sort of ruminating about how bad things are in the world. And I thought to myself, why didn't I do more? What more can I do? And then why not do more? And what it is, it's also quite a large piece. It's about, again, it's about 58 inches long. And it's all about what all the things that just are ruining our lives: hunger, disease, refugee crisis, overdevelopment, lack of education. And so on the top, you have all these elements of racism, famine, child abuse. And then I just thought, that's just not good enough. So on the bottom, I put the organizations that are addressing these issues: New Yorkers Against Gun Violence, Red Hook Initiative, the Vera Center, Share a Meal, Adult Learning, the International Rescue Committee. And somebody said to me that I ought to make this into a huge poster and send it to all these organizations. This was really kind of a cathartic piece for me. What I also do are Jewish marriage contracts. Jewish marriage contracts have been done for hundreds of years. It's a tradition that I learned when I was in college, decided to try creating it myself. And this is a Jewish marriage contract, which basically details the obligations that the husband has toward the wife. It's like a 2,000-year-old formulation. This is actually a modernized version in English, French, and Hebrew with three-dimensional elements.
It's beautiful.
It's something I really enjoy doing. So how do I get out of here?
I think it has something to do with when you zoom all the way out.
Yeah,
and then you'll
I'll
get
zoom
your
out.
little
Yeah, there we
thing.
go. And now we're into some of my paper cutting. This is a man contemplating the universe. And basically, it's also about 22 inches. I like to work in Arches hot press watercolor paper, 90 pound. It cuts like butter, and it's very strong, and I can paint with acrylics once I cut it out. So it's done on white paper. I draw the design and then paint it. And it's kind of folky and it's kind of strange because I have the symbols of the Masonic symbols, the olive for truth, the cosmos, and all kinds of elements. It's just kind of a fantasy, putting together lots of strange and elements from the animal world and from this kind of esoteric sources.
I like the folks in this, so it's beautiful.
Yeah. So I also take poems. This is a series I did. It's also paper cut, work in cut paper and painted. And this is based on a poem by Pablo Neruda about a very passionate love poem about a man rising from the ashes like a razor blade, and the woman also rises like a fish out of water, and they build a machinery and they tear down mountains, and then in the end they look into each other's eyes and then they know love. So I was just really struck by the power of this poem, and I wanted to create something that was similarly powerful and
Deborah,
very graphic.
I'm going to read a few of the comments. Pamela Goldman says, this is magnificent. And I think she's echoing all of our thoughts. Barbara Sherman asks if on the Ketubah, did you do the calligraphy, and what kind of cutter did you use for your cutout work?
I did all the work. I painted, and I calligraphed, and I use an X-Acto knife, a pen knife, or a scalpel, a number 11 blade.
Sandra Indig says, uncanny juxtaposition of nature and the fence. And certainly that was the image where the fence and nature came through the middle. Susan Tiffin says she loves the detail and depth you capture. And Audrey Anastasi echoes, a few have a magical character. Eileen Hoffman, I love the way you capture the light, air, and movement of the trees. And let's see, lastly, Sandra Indrich says, so thrilled to see your large body of work. Had only known your paper cutout, Sandra. And I'll emphasize, often we think we know an artist and we really just know one segment. We really just know one segment of their work. And so many of us are diverse in many ways. And so a platform like this, or, ideally a retrospective exhibition at MoMA, gets to show everybody the full diversity that we do. Keep going, Deborah. Your work's brilliant. And, I do use that rule where, we can keep going. We do have just 4 presenters, so.
Okay. I don't have many more because I don't want to dominate, but I also do, let me go back to the other one, sorry, which I didn't talk about. This is also, a lot of my work has to do with feminism, political issues, and the environment. And this piece I did in the, actually kind of a while ago, but it's also of cut paper and paint. And what it is in the 90s, when there was a lot more positivity about peace in the Middle East, I took the Israeli flag and the Palestinian flag, Hebrew letters and Arabic letters, and I tried to use art as a way to convey my hope for some kind of coexistence. And what I did was I took the Israeli flag, as I said, and the Palestinian flags, and then I sort of, on the bottom here, I worked on ways of creating some kind of harmonious interaction, integrating the 2 flags. These pieces are about 12 inches square. And I just, maybe we can have a little bit of, and this is actually part of that. I created this whole installation based on Hebrew and Arabic letter forms. And these are large cutout spheres, discs that I superimposed on each other, and the light shines through. And when the light shines through, you get these amazing patterns. You see a little bit here, and when they're reflected on the walls, you get this integration and this beautiful, cooperation really between the negative and positive spaces in the work, which is a metaphor. Then I also do these 3-dimensional pieces, which are based on poems, interpretations of poems. This one's called Love and War. And it's also a charity box. This is based on my reading of a poem by Yehuda Amichai, who is an Israeli poet who infuses his work with biblical references and a real strong anti-war advocate and really powerful poet. Then my little work during COVID, just again, this sort of the story of the bear. And these are done on silhouette paper, which is about 15 inches wide. And I'm okay. So this is, if anybody wants to ask me about that, but I think we're done. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Our usual way of saying thank you.
I have a quick question.
Of
Yeah.
course.
So the last piece looked like a Pieta.
Yeah.
And I also addressed New Testament metaphors and stories, and I'm of a Jewish background as well as obviously you are from your work.
Right.
So I know you've kind of jumped past that, but I'm kind of curious. So what's that
You know what?
about?
Well, does everybody want to see that? Okay,
Oh,
I'll
yeah.
share my screen.
Hi,
again.
Michael.
I'll just speak very briefly. So this is actually a sketch I did. I was in Italy a couple of years ago, and I was just like really intrigued by this interplay of paganism and Christianity and the love for Greek art and how it all interplays, and also the idea of how death is so intertwined in the life and the culture of Italy. All this sort of the strange sort of interplay of
Thank you, Michael.
sin and pain, and to some extent masochistic representations of, you know, Jesus being tortured on the cross, and the whole idea of the layers of history. And this is actually my little sketch about Naples, about how the layers of history, the layers and layers, and under the layers is a lot of death and a lot of this crazy interplay of paganism and Christianity. And I would love to pursue that in my art and in reading about it and exploring it. So that's what these little sketches are. Just really quick little, you know, quickie things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe Audrey will get together and chat about that. Good.
Excellent. I think we'll move forward. Michael Krasowitz is here to help us. Guy Augeri is going to go next. I want to beforehand thank Michael for helping us out. He's going to help us with the screen sharing. He actually just came off surgery, and to let you know the kind of guy he is, he's actually helping us out while he's not feeling quite well. And certainly, you're welcome, Michael. It's just part of the group effort. A lot of people seem to jump in and do for our group, and I really do appreciate it, just as your time here. Again, we're ATOA, a 501c3. Our website has everything you'd ever want to know about us, plus more. And our archives are held at the American Archives, the Archives of American Art at the Smithsonian Institute. So there are links there to our talks that go back to our beginnings in 1975. So Guy, we'll move on to you. I'll just point out, Guy is coming to us from Puerto Rico. I think the first speaker we've had come in from there. And as many of you know, this is our alternative to live presentations. It has had its odd windfall in that we've had speakers from Venice, Italy come on. We've had people come in from England. Puerto Rico certainly a lot closer, but it would still be a tough swim to come to New York, to the Lower West Side. So
Yes, it would be.
So welcome, Guy, and go ahead, share with us. And Michael, I'll let you screen share and just run through the images as best you can. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, you want me to show the first image?
Yes.
Sure. Thank you. That'd be cool. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, well, this was a series, I was, using Captain America. I'm sort of exploring, this idea of male identity. And you could run through these. I think I sent 3 images of using Captain America doll and, common doll, but I was shooting these images through layers of glass and various lights. And rather than, usually when we take photographs, we're shooting down. I'm shooting, the camera is underneath the glass, shooting upwards. And it causes all sorts of interesting things, causes issues with focus. But it's, as a male, we're, pigeonholed. Our identity as a man is really focused very early on. I'm the eldest of 6. I was expected to do things. My father was an architect and he traveled. The arch in St. Louis was one of his projects, the 666 Fifth Avenue. I grew up in skyscrapers in Manhattan. I was born in Brooklyn and then we moved out to Levittown, Long Island. I could grab, after school, I could grab a bus from, Levittown to the Hicksville train station, be in Manhattan in 20 minutes, walk up to 666 Fifth Avenue and, hang out with my father in a building with, no glass, and just wait for him and walk around Manhattan, run to the Metropolitan at 8 years old, Metropolitan Museum of Art. But, my role, I was the eldest of 6. So I had jobs to do that most boys didn't have to do. But, intrigued by the, iconography. I missed out on all that stuff as a boy growing up, having certain toys. I played military. I grew up, my father was an ex-Marine Corps, sharpshooter, electrical engineer, and, aviation, avionics. And, I had a very serious childhood, nice. It was great, growing up in Levittown. I kept out of my mother's hair as often as I could, but, you didn't get a chance to really be a boy. Became a man very early on, and, you just did school was the sanctuary, and that was a chance because teachers realized that, you were a little different because you were well behaved and you had respect for other people. And, a lot of kids, they didn't have that foundation. And, but so, I just found, this Captain America doll and, and I, just got a kick out of him, and it started to become sort of significant to me as sort of this, representation of, what, some people think of as a man and being patriotic. But if you can run some of the other images, I think this is one of the weaker, not, but I like that one. You can sort of get a sense of what's happening with light and shadow and, and like what, how a man's body is supposed to look like. I know women, have, our women's identity, body identity is very controlled, but it's male also, have, if you have to have, an athletic body, there's certain controls, and especially now, where, it's, male, body control is much stronger than it used to be. And now I think there's a much more open role for women. These pieces can be, since they're photographs, they can be printed from, 16 inches tall by 12 inches wide, and they can go up to about 4 feet tall and proportionally wide. I am talking to a fabricator, and he believes he can make them bigger, which I'm interested in. But the next one I even like more because the refraction of light and the displacement. I mean, they're almost like performance pieces. And I have no traditional photographic materials. I was an art director. I mean, I got married at 19. I had my first child at 24. I was a painter, and I was represented by Gracie Mansion Gallery from 1983 to 1993, and I just, I'm not interested in. I'm getting interested in painting, and I do paint. I mean, a lot of my work are constructions that I disassemble. Like these are studio pieces, and I'm like fabricating. I fabricate things. It's an illusion, and and yes, I'm consciously playing with scale, but sometimes things go beyond. You don't have, honestly, I had no idea that I was going to get the multiple hands happening, but I had, I can't remember, I had 2 or 3 pieces of glass occurring, and my hand is, like Captain America's body is below, my hand is below Captain America's hand, and then so you got these layers, and somehow the reflection of my hand is on top of his thighs. And and I just love when these things happen, because I like when serendipity. There's the opportunity for chance. Life is not predictable, but a lot of times I do know what's going to happen, and after a while, you can predict certain things, but then I love, like, the next morning when you go through the 30 photographs that you've taken, that you're suddenly shocked that this actually happens, and it's a lovely feeling. You know how that happens. It's like, you knock over the bowl of water and it spills, or you knock over your glass of wine and suddenly there's a message from the bottle, on your painting, and it's a great feeling. And not everything I do is. I mean, I sometimes say nature shots also, but you could go to the next round of photographs, because I'll talk your ear off on these. And then I also, like, there's a series. These are I find, like, here in Puerto Rico, there's a lot of vacant buildings, and I just sort of explore. And I found this building, and I dragged sheets of glass. This is automotive glass. It's like 3 sheets of glass, and I dragged different. There's gypsum and dust and metal and my footprints and all sorts of stuff, and I just keep on layering. And sometimes I'm not, I don't complete the piece, all the time, in one session, because of various reasons. I'm not satisfied. I don't have enough materials, and I just leave it there. And nobody goes into these buildings. Recently, I did a sculpture with some scrap iron, and I found a welding. I never welded before. I welded this thing together, and I really liked the piece. And then I was coming back with a truck to take it home, and somebody sold it for scrap. So I got a kick out of that. And but I love these pieces. But then I photograph. It's impossible to carry this back, because it's automotive safety glass. It's too dangerous to move, too heavy to move, and it's sort of part of my the process of finding it's street art. It's graffiti, but it has all the stuff. And yes, there is a connection. I mean, I feel it's very Dada, very Duchamp. I mean, and I call it a large glass or a larger glass. And, you know, as we all know that, you know, Duchamp did those, you know, beautiful, the bride strip there, you know, and then when it was shipped, you know, from, you know, I don't know if it was from Europe, if it was from Europe to New York and then to Philadelphia, all this dust, Man Ray took those photographs. And when I saw what I was after, you know, I'm not, you know, when I'm working, I'm not thinking about art history, but we all have an accumulation of art history. So that when after you finish working, suddenly you see, you know, you see it. You know, I'm not thinking about Duchamp when I'm doing this, or Jasper Johns, but I look at this now in retrospect, and I see this. You know, I'm not saying you know that it's as good as their work, or whatever, but I feel this connection, and you know, and it's satisfying. But I love, you know, I love the process, and I don't mind that it doesn't exist anymore. You know, it exists as a photograph, and that was one of the problems as a painter. That, you know, yeah, I mean, all my paintings were 8 foot tall, 6 feet wide. I couldn't, you know, hang them in my house. That they hung in collectors' houses. I like that this is something. It's democratic. Anybody could. It's affordable. It's an addition. Somebody could put it in their bathroom if they wish, or wherever. You know, it's, you know, to me, that's an important thing. And, you know, I mean, you could show the companion piece. I mean, I work in series. There's always about 12. You can see that's another couple pieces of glass. And I stole some of the elements from, you know, these pieces I take, you know, I mean, I pray to God nobody was hurt in this fractured glass, but, you know, it's automotive, you know, safety glass. So, you know, people probably didn't get hurt, but, you know, I like the opacity, and it's on, you know, I mean, I dirty the floor up. I'm stepping on it. I'm sometimes crushing the glass. And, you know, I'm not interested. I don't want a signature style. And that's what everybody, I mean, you know, you're told in art school, you have to have an, you know, signature style. I'm not afraid. I don't care. I don't want a signature style because I'm moving, you know, every day we're bombarded by emotions, by different things. I mean, I would love to be like one of those cave painters, you know, that you know, Altamira or Chartres Cathedral, that, you know, that's your fixation. But you know, there are certain issues that come up. I mean, you know, like gender issues, growing up as a man, I have to speak to that. Or I have, you know, issues, you know, feelings that are poetic about, you know, where this is to me much more poetic and it's nuanced. You know, this talks about time and immortality, mortality, you know, for me. And, you know, I don't, we can go on to something else if you wish. I tend to make people fall. Here, this is like roadside art. You know, I walk a lot in Puerto Rico and I deposit stuff along the road. I walk along the road, I gather stuff. I found a sign, you know, a piece of the sign. I threw that on the side, and then I make shadow boxes. And then you know, I write on it, I paint it, I have, you know, like a bucket of paint, couple of paint, different types of paint, some black, some white. You know, and then this is over a period of time. I let rain fall and I stick it, you know, I live essentially, it's a jungle out here, and the jungle is always encroaching on the development, you know, the roadways, the malls. I mean, you know, in Puerto Rico, we have all the same mall. You know, we have churches, churches, chicken, McDonald's, but the jungle's constantly encroaching on us. And, you know, so I can stuff things underneath, you know, underneath the brush, and I find tarps, and then eventually, you know, I get this, and then I take a photograph of it, and then I disassemble it, or I leave it and let it weather, and then, or take parts of it and then put it there. But then I like the idea of just taking a photograph of it, you know, and it's like, you know, and it's ephemeral, that it's gone, and the only thing that's left is the photograph. And I think I was trying to say namaste, but I don't know. I don't know what the next image is. I can't hear you. Did I mute you? No.
Sorry. No, you're good. I'm actually going to stop screen sharing and I'll continue with the last two images. Michael, thank you again for helping us. And bear with me as I try this. I will read a few comments. Leah Paula says, bravo to you. First time I've heard a frank artist interest in portraying the aging male. Deborah Ugoretz says, these are provocative. And I think you mentioned the size of the prints can vary from 16 inches to 4 feet, correct?
Yes.
Guy?
Yes.
Audrey Anastasi says, very interesting scale play. And I'll point out, Audrey is both an artist and a gallerist. And so now I'm going to attempt to screen share myself. Wish me luck here. Let's see, screen share. Share. Ooh, does everybody see 2 images on their screen?
Yeah.
Excellent. So,
and these are just more or less strict. These really show the sense of light. This was just taken Saturday in Puerto Rico. I don't use any filters or any Photoshop, nothing. A lot of it has to do with the angle that you're standing when you. I was with my sister and she could not see what I was seeing, and it's almost like you've got to bend your body to see those rays of light, which was almost imperceptible, but from the corner of my eye, I could see something was going on. And then by leaning back and looking up, I could get the separation of light with those diagonal lines. And it was, you know, it's just wonderful. And in Puerto Rico, the shadows actually have, I didn't see this at first, but if you look into the corner of any shadow, you will see an amethyst or lavender cast. And it's this incredible thing. And it's something to do, like the sunlight almost is always overhead. And, you know, there's always like 13 hours of sunlight. It's almost always directly overhead, except at sunrise and sunset. And, you know, there's something truly magical. I'm so, you know, we're so close, you know, Puerto Rico is very close to the equator, and it's quite magical. And it is such a play with light and color, you know, before storms. You have all these moments, and I, you know, run out. I'm up almost every morning around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm walking, you know, the streets, and then, you know, I go out 3 times a day. I'm photographing constantly. I'm, you know, foraging for stuff, and then I take time, you know, in the studio, you know, indoors, and, you know, it's just fun. And, you know, going to the beach is always, you know, it's work, and it's fun, you know. If it isn't fun, you know, you know, and there's, you know, research, constant, you know, research, because something always leads you to another thing. And, you know, I'm, you know, really, you know, very grateful. I really want to thank Barry for this opportunity, and for Pam Goldman, who introduced me to Barry. This is, you know, it's just been a phenomenal week. And I sent a few more, but that's enough, because I've taken more than my 10 minutes of allotment. And this is really cool. I look forward to seeing the rest of the show.
thank you, Guy.
Yeah, thank you. We can snap our fingers like they did in the beatnik days.
We used to do snaps and claps. You know,
Yeah, we used to do snaps. Yeah.
No, that was a very nice presentation. Very nice.
Thank you for your assistance. You know, and really appreciate that.
You're welcome. I'll open it up to any other comments, and then Marc Josloff will present. I'll just remind everybody, this talk will be on our YouTube channel, probably by Wednesday. You can see previous talks on our website. And if you'd like to become a part of what goes on here, this is a rare sort of open format where we let anyone sort of share as we go. And we do have sort of a full program tonight, but you can present for 2020 what you're interested in sharing, whether you come up with a full program or not. And we have a programming planning committee that you're welcome to join. If anybody would like any information at all, you can reach out to me, or you can go on the website and you will see emails for Jacqueline Sferrarata, who's our secretary of ATOA. So thank you. I do want to recognize we have a board member here tonight, Fran Beeler. Thanks for coming on board and on the Zoom. So welcome, Fran. And nice to see so many faces who have presented and also who have organized talks that are coming up. I'll open it up to questions if anybody would like to jump in, or just comments, and then we'll move on to Marc.
Yeah, Barry, it's Mark. Michael made a comment that he's not into what you would call a signature style, but I must say that everything that he showed tonight tied together, and we would know that it was part of the same body of work by this particular artist, Michael Krasnowitz. So I can understand he's not trying to establish a specific style, but I think it's coming out of him in the most natural way. I think everybody would agree with me.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I didn't know, you just don't think about it, but that was always the thing that they hit you over the head in school, was get your signature style. And I have no interest in that,
Right.
Yeah.
And I'll jump in and make one comment. Let me make sure I'm not unmuted. Yes, you made mention of that the work looks like Duchamp, or you mentioned another artist. And I read something interesting recently about memory and influence. And yes, there's those moments where we actually know and are conscious that we have a memory of seeing something, and then we go ahead and portray it. And that's sort of the direct one we know. But this article brought out that we actually take in some images, and then years later, we're sort of not aware of them, and then they seep through, so to speak, and they come out and we think they're fresh. And then there's the other thought, which I like to say a lot, which is that, we all dip into the same river. So you may not have had no intention and no influence from Duchamp, or let's say Man Ray, but you're reaching from the same source that the artist reached from. And so you're drawing from the same river. And so you end up with sort of parallel streams, but it's not an influence, it's more of a confluence coming from the heart of art. Not to interject my own personal point of view, but I think that's an artist working at his best. And so, most people don't know this. I was a math major, and in 2 dimensions, there are only 17 different forms. I know it sounds odd. You think there's lots of different wallpaper, but there are only 17 different kinds when you reduce them down to the patterns that they form. And I would say with artists, there's something similar going on. We think we have infinite expression, but there may be this sort of limited vocabulary, and we're inevitable to be drawing down meaning, but there's only so much variety of meaning, and we are going to look like other artists. And indeed, no artist owns that form, although you will be taught that in your MFA or your BFA program, that no, you can't do that. That artist does that. You can't do that. Certainly as artists, we know we're free to do what we want, certainly to make our own rules or break other rules, but most importantly, just to create. Whether you choose to look at a work, recently I copied a Cézanne, or you choose to do whatever it is you want. And it can be hard to know where the influence is coming from. But I think with you, Guy, it's obvious, you're in nature, you go for walks in the morning. I think you're very much an organic artist, and the form or the art sort of flows through you. So beautiful work. Thank you for that presentation. And Marc, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Thank you so
Okay.
much. It's very kind of you.
Okay, I see I'm unmuted. Everybody can hear me, right? Well, I can't hear you, of course. So I'm always impressed by the uniqueness of all the artists on this show, Barry. And And I find that's true in the classes in which I teach. I'm really exhilarated when I see everybody's uniqueness, their style coming through. Even if I'm teaching a specific methodology, it's obvious that they cannot help but be themselves in the work. So I'm going to show and talk about something I've been doing over the last several years and where it might have come from in my work. Because even though I thought it was fresh and new, when I look back at my more ancient pieces, I see aspects of it already in what I did. The first one, let me do the share screen, that would help. Where is it now? Trying to find it. Where is it?
It's usually on the bottom. It's usually on the bottom. There's like a green thing that says share screen. No?
Right, it's a green button.
Right in the middle, it says share content.
No, that I found, but I'm looking at my desktop and I don't see the preview that I set up. Oh, here it is. Here it is. I found it.
You see it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, so I would say I did the first one right here in the last century. That sounds like an awful lot of time. But I was around then, and I'm sure I did it in the the 1900s. And you could tell I probably was already enamored with the work of Henri Matisse, his drawings. But I was trying to get a flowing line and make it as efficient as possible and not worry about depicting all of the details. So I would say a little while after that, I was going to concerts up in the Berkshires, in Tanglewood, and I would just draw while the dancers were in motion, and just trying to do some of it from memory because they're moving so fast. There was no way that you could detail it. You had to work with look, hold, and draw. You look, you hold it in your mind, and then you draw it, and then try to get in there for the next part of the movement. These are some others. You can almost tell what kind of folk dance it was. So sometime also in the last century, I had been commissioned to do a piece on the subject of jazz. And you can see that my paintings were figurative, kind of realistic, but the composition was abstract. What I noticed looking back at this is that there are these shapes done in watercolor that are very blob-like. They're curvilinear. Some of them are soft and have wet edges, but others are very definitive shapes. So after that, I was doing a lot of anatomy, figure work at the Art Students League. And here again, I can see I was using these blobs, the blob shapes, and there's a sense of outline as well. Now, I think that all artists who really love art and are serious about it want to evolve. They want to grow. And it's not a complete breakaway from what they're doing, but more like a spin-off. And I find it fascinating to see how each time in my artistic life, I'm spinning off from what I did before. In this case, I was using a broad marker and then letting the watercolor sit within the lines and cause the lines to bleed a little bit too, because they were water-soluble markers. And still, there are some blobby shapes here. They're not filled in like a coloring book. And then I decided not to contain them, but see if I can move those color shapes outside of the figure and inside, actually go from outside into inside. And so this was another step along the way in that evolution of what I now call line and blob painting. These must have been small files. But you can see how the line is starting to communicate with the color shapes. They're not separate here, but they're one is joining into the other. And then in 2013, I and a friend of mine with the two art teachers on Block Island, he was doing the oil painting and I was teaching watercolor. And in my little sketchbook, I painted the southeast lighthouse on Block Island using ink lines for the contour and followed up afterwards with the blob shapes. And now it was really starting to materialize for me. I saw that I didn't have to paint in completely, but I could manufacture white shapes of my own making just because I wanted to, even if the light was coming from another side. At this point, it wasn't just representational, but it was starting to become decorative because I'm moving these shapes where I want and they're playing up against each other. So as I was teaching, I did some demos and I tried to be as efficient as I could with my black lines and then have the colors move around, actually dance with the black lines and also leave these white shapes, which would create a sense of freshness and animation. And the key here is not that the subject is moving or a sense of the subject moving, but the fact that as artists, our eyes are moving, our hands are moving. And if we're tourists looking around from left to right, up and down, we're moving around and taking in things from all around us, just totally panoramic. And then our job is to try to trap it into the four borders of the paper. This was a night scene, actually, in Trouville in Normandy. And actually the sun was setting and the photograph is very dark and very brooding. And once I did the contour drawing, which again is a gesture drawing, leaving things out and not being perfect, I decided that I could just do the colors the next day, just for its own sake. And I didn't have to follow the color atmosphere that I actually saw when the sun was setting. So I took a nighttime scene, made it into a daytime scene. I oftentimes tell my students, once you have the drawing, turn the photograph upside down and forget about it. And then it's all up to you to play and compose and make the colors dance around the lines. Here's one from south of France, sitting on a slab of rock. And you can see that the lines, instead of being straight, are very shaky. And I am developing a little tremor every now and then, I notice it, but it's not that bad. This was intentional shaking. And again, I tell those who I'm teaching line and blob paintings to, I said, if you're not nervous, make yourself a little nervous and embrace that. That way, when we're 90 years old, everything will look perfect, you know? But here again, the blue of the boat is treated as separate shapes that continue along and kind of meander. They go for a walk, and the reds will move, the yellows will move, the blues will move, and hopefully it'll be harmonious in the end. Now here are the blobs on the shadow side of the building also. Okay, here's a good example of how the photograph can change. This was an island in Greece, Patmos, and here is the painting. There's the photo, and there's the painting. So the photo is very graphic. It has some strong, almost silhouetted type shapes. but using the method where you're doing the contour lines, having them travel along, skip and dance, and then following up with the blobs, you really make it your own at that point. Even if you're working from a photographer's work, by the time you're finished, you've made it your own completely. Sort of like what Barry was talking about before. Okay, Van Gogh had done quite a lot of paintings of this bridge, the Langlois Bridge in Arles, in Provence area of France. So I had been there as a tourist. I took photographs, and from my own shots, I had a go at it myself using the line and the blob. In this case, I was demonstrating for an art association, and I said a good way to practice is to not look at your paper. It's called blind drawing. So you're looking at the reference, or you're looking at the subject, and you're just trusting your hands to make the right movements. Of course, occasional cheating, you want to see if you're still on the paper, but for the most part, you're feeling the movement of the pen rather than trying to make sure that everything is accurate. And then I followed up with the blob shapes afterwards, as you could say.
Mark, I just want to read a few of the comments in the chat. Barbara Sherman says you really exploit the kind of wildness and uncontrollability of watercolor, and you put it to good use. Maureen Morris says making the colors dance around the lines resonates with me. Fran Beeler, one of our board members at ATOA, says, I love that line and blob. It's so unpretentious, but quite beautiful. Lois Bender, sorry, says very free and lyrical, more interesting. That's an observational drawing. Barbara Sherman, I mentioned, oh, she just means that you put your tremor to good use. And yes, there is something to wiggling the hand, as I often call it, that activates the line, no question about it. Right. Elisa Pritzker is going to ask you to expand on your concept of blob. And before she does, I'll say Beverly Choltko Devlin says, I took a workshop with Mark. It radically changed my art for the better. And indeed, that can be maybe one of the nicest things to hear, the influence an artist has on a student. And of course, the relationship artist to student is always somewhat thrown on its head because we sort of mentor each other. Even just trying to express to a student, you're forced to really say it right in a way, and it sort of elevates you to say, to see things the best. There's no question. So if you would answer Alyssa and just expand on the blob, it's not a reference to the 1950s movie.
Well, the comments were great. I love them all. And the word lyrical was mentioned. I think that is what the objective is. It's almost like creating music. If you look at the work of Vasily Kandinsky, it went from impressionistic to abstract to expressionistic to abstract. He decided that it was the colors and the shapes and the lines that was first and foremost for him. After such a long career already, experimenting with other methods. But yes, it is appropriate for watercolor to let it do its thing. It's unlike any of the other mediums that I know of. And in this example, in the upper right-hand corner, you see what I call a blob. And a blob is like a funky shape. It's not a rectangle, it's not a square, it's not a perfect triangle, but it's an organic shape. You know, you could squeeze it and it chuckles. This blob is painted into wet paper, so it has soft edges like a cloud. And other blobs are painted while the paint underneath it is dry. So this blob over here has a hard edge, a very clear edge. So you can use wet and dry to your advantage. Once you get to know how the water reacts with the paint and the brush, then you're friends to each other. And that's a beautiful thing with watercolor. I started off thinking that watercolor was scary because I screw up a lot in life. And watercolor, from what I had heard, you're not supposed to make mistakes. You have to know what you're going to do ahead of time and don't fail. Along the way, I found out it was very forgiving. And what you have to do is embody it. Let it do what it wants to do and meet it halfway. So the blobs are really different kinds of shapes that have personality. I hope that answered the question.
I have a question too. I have a question. Can you mentioned something about, oh, I guess I should put on my video. You mentioned something about decorative versus representational. What did you mean by decorative versus representational?
Okay, well, the blobs by nature are flat shapes, okay? And these are not really modeled as classical artists would do, with lights, middle tones, and darks, and give it a roundness or a square facet. Like this house over here on the right, you see, it's just continuous from the front of the house to the side of the house. It's really one big yellow shape that morphs into orange. The only thing that tends to divide it is the line. So there's no modeling. In that sense, it's left for the shapes, the flat shapes, to be the protagonists in this play. Flat shapes, and they repeat themselves as patterns. They have important spaces in between the negative shapes. And in that sense, it's like a wallpaper or a fabric. Or you might even think of Gauguin's paintings when he was in Polynesia, when he was imitating the clothes that the natives were wearing and putting it into his painting. That became his way of working. So that's what I mean by decorative. In decorative painting, you could make it look like you're looking down, straight down on something rather than off into the distance, because it's really the organization of the shapes that's important. Let's see.
Let's see a few more, Mark. And actually, you went from Gauguin. You mentioned decorative, and that was a big part. And Gauguin was known for flattening the shape, just as you mentioned how the blob sort of spreads out. Martha Lipton says, "I love your teaching, Mark." Lothario Badenhausen says, "Your paintings are alive, capable of change. I hope you don't kill them under glass. Just my love of these." Very nice thoughts. And Deborah Ugoretz has another thought. There's got to be a better word than blob, because what you are doing with water is so much more worthy than blob. But I sense what you're doing is you're working with the freeness of the water, the expansion of water, but it is controlled. You're not pouring water on your work, which of course you could do, but you're working with the uncontrollability within a controlled sort of boundary, or if not boundary, sort of controlling the uncontrollable, I would say.
Exactly right. I couldn't say it any better. I oftentimes try to lighten up my students so they'll have fun with the shapes, and that's why I call it a blob, understanding that some may see the word blob and not take it seriously from the get-go. But it becomes serious when you realize that you really have to do some thinking and feeling while you're painting, and do it fast. You don't have time to have a board meeting about what to do next. Watercolor is like that. It's very fast and spontaneous. So it's something you take seriously, but still at the same time, have fun with it. And that's where the word blob comes in. I have been showing you the steps along the way. Bing, bing, there, and now
Bada bing.
the final Sagrada Familia. Here are some fast ones. That's Dubrovnik. You could do this with figures too. It's not just travel. I took this one figure of a model I had for my class, and I took it to another level by adding background to it and changing I love the color in the photo, but you can spring out from there and do something very creative if you want to. It could be a thin, fragile, delicate line like this, which I think speaks to the flowers, the bouquet behind her. Oh, this is my favorite, I gotta tell you. This is called A Rose and Her Roses. You know, she came out, this was in the Amalfi Coast in Italy. I was at a cafe and I saw this woman come out to greet the day. She opened up her windows and she had a little flower box of roses in the front. And that was very special to me. And I just wanted to capture it in a fresh way. Here, this is flowers alone. And this one, I thought I was using a waterproof pen, but it bled. So I just went with it. You know, it's just like with the watercolor. If something happens, you go with it. In this case, I was using the wrong side of an old sheet of paper. So I really had to rub in the colors. But that was an excuse to use bold lines to hold it all together. And he was actually playing this in the Andes Mountains. We got the photograph from a friend. And recently I was at a park in Huntington, and I just loved the whole environment. It was so peaceful and serene. I was just hoping that I could add all these white shapes and not make it too exciting, to just leave the serenity be. But I think that came through in keeping the greens and blues and yellows toned down. But there were people painting and drawing. So that was a very wonderful experience to just capture it. It was a little sketch pad. Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was brilliant. A lot of nice thoughts in there. Nice to see a teacher presenting, some students present. And of course, as artists, we all sort of teach each other, and certainly a lot to pick up from what you showed us tonight. I'm going to move over to Susan Kaprov now, just for a sense of time. I just will add, Audrey Anastasi says, the shapes are amorphous shapes. So you could tell your students blob, but when you write it up for your exhibition, you use amorphous shape. Just put blob in parentheses. And I do myself, I like to jump away from art speak, but certainly amorphous shape is a nice representation. Susan, welcome.
Hi, I'm gonna get mute.
And while Susan puts it up, I'll just remind everybody, this is ATOA, Artist Talk on Art. We're a 501c3. We're here every Monday. Next week, we have Jacqueline Cedar presenting. She's an artist and a gallerist. She runs Good Naked Gallery, and her gallery has shown artists from their gallery in the past. This time, she's actually exhibiting at Shelter, New York City, NYC, and the gallerist Rachel Cohn will be there. So all artists should hear. There are 2 gallerists talking next Monday. We know that's our ice cream and our candy all at once. So I recommend I recommend you all come to that talk. Susan, I'm going to ask you to unmute and screen share whenever you're ready, Susan.
Okay, I just hope this works. Good.
If it doesn't, we have people who always jump in. And I do want to thank you, Babs, for helping us out with some technical difficulty, and always with great questions, and everybody for great comments along the way.
Can you see this?
Not yet.
I didn't do screen sharing. That's why.
Okay, so hit the screen share green button at the bottom. That should do the trick.
Oh, good. All right. Trying to end the show.
And everyone, do keep in mind, you're always welcome to reach out to us to form a panel. We have a programming committee. You're welcome to join our programming meetings. I see Alyssa Pritzker here. She has joined some of our meetings, proposed talks, and that's really how we get our outreach and we sort of grow our presentation. Susan, it's working. I see it now. I see all the emails you sent to that guy.
Do you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, I do see it.
You don't see what's on my desktop though, do you? I hope not.
Ooh, no, we
Yeah,
actually
all
now
those-
it's now
Hello,
it's all
everyone.
lines. Yeah, we see hello everyone, Susan Kaprov, what I did during lockdown.
Okay. Lockdown for me was a very special thing. To tell you the honest truth, I really enjoyed it. I thought I would feel lonely, although I have friends and I'm in a long-term relationship with a wonderful man. That didn't matter so much. I just had the chance to just think of what are my priorities as an artist, as a person, and how am I going to use this very quiet time to prioritize exactly what my life is about. I mean, why am I doing what I'm doing? I mean, I don't want to make this into some existential crisis, but I kind of, I thought it'd be a kind of interesting thing to do. I mean, and I felt very safe at home in my studio. So this presentation is a stream of consciousness. I drew a little bit borrowed from my last one several months ago. And I said, well, what does it mean to be an artist now? You know, anybody could guess. As I said, your guess may be as good as mine. I have a really strong need to create. It gives me pleasure. That's all I can say. I'm not on a mission. I think I have a very rich sense of what is around me. I'm sensitive to many things. I mean, what are the pieces that make up me? And does it matter? No, it doesn't. But so what? So for me, everything begins with an idea. Everything with me, with my art, everything begins with an idea. It may be aesthetic, it may be a conceptual idea. I consider myself, as I say here, I use my studio as a laboratory and my art as a series of research projects. And I enjoy taking risks. I do not have an immediately recognizable signature style, which has posed a problem and has also been a great advantage. It depends who's looking at it. Sometimes museum curators don't seem to mind a bit, but certain gallery dealers, they are uncomfortable. They need to sell the work and they need to have a consistency. But then people tell me I do have a consistency. So I sort of throw the dice out. I don't really care. I do what I do. My ideas spring very much from the natural and man-made worlds and the conflicts that arise between them, and the emergency, the sense of urgency, and emergency is what's going on. I often thought that what's going on in terms of our climate change and the natural world, how we're destroying it, and I'm not going to go on to a polemic about that, everybody's aware of it. I thought maybe I would do something about that in my work to express my love of nature. Environmental concerns are a vital issue. There's no question about that. And look at how, you know, beautiful nature is, and all of that informs us when we build these awful skyscrapers. I have a real thing about these skinny buildings going up. I don't know how people feel about them, but I really don't like them at all. I think they're ugly, even though their footprint is small. I think they're ugly. I think this is Shanghai, but I'm not positive. And look at all the similarities between our world and the natural world, which is built by itself. I mean, it just continues as a phenomenon, but so does our world as well. and this is my most favorite, are these spirals that seem throughout the universe, throughout the natural world, and on the smallest level of biological life on Earth. And these are black and white drawings. These are two out of a series of 12 that I had shown a couple of years ago at the Hayden Planetarium. And I was also very influenced by the rhythmic structure of Van Gogh's drawings. These are white over black, and they're made out of gouache and pencil.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they're 16 by 20 inches. I'm looking for a venue to show them. They're very striking, and I have shown them around. I showed them at the Alaska Museum of Contemporary Art, Madeline Jordan Fine Arts, and the Hayden Planetarium. And I gave them a suite of prints based on this as well. And this, these are computer generated images, and I love science fiction. You can feel the kind of fantasy and rich color that I use in almost all my work, or it's very high contrast, black and white. They're very dreamlike, and I sort of went in that direction. I really had a tremendous amount of time on my hands, and I wasn't under any pressure to do anything. So I decided to do whatever I wanted to, consistent or not. Come on, let's go. Here's another one I call Oath, because it looks like somebody is taking an oath on the left-hand side. I make up the stories after I do the images, or sometimes I entitle things. I figure out a nice title and then I do the image. It's so fluid, it's so spontaneous. I'm very influenced by jazz, someone else mentioned, because of the improvisational nature of it. Jazz is very emotional for me. You never know where it's going. It starts out from a point of reference and then it just goes way off. Some of it does, not all. So I really like the idea of improvisation. This is a piece that I did at the Corcoran Art Gallery. It's a dye sublimation on aluminum. It's in panels, but you can't see it. They're very well constructed. They're very close together. This is a visualization. This was a lot. The pandemic started about 3 or 4 months, and I was supposed to do this, and then there were budget problems. So I did a public art maquette for the PATH train. I do a lot of public art, and this is where I have restrictions because I can't always do what I want in public art. I have to. It's like making a movie. You know, there are other people you have to deal with. There's this community thing. I mean, sometimes you say community. I just want to leave a trail of dust. I mean, don't tell me about the community. I have enough problems with, you know, people around me. But at any rate, I won't get into that. So this may get done at some point. I hope it does. Now, this was something I did just a couple of months ago. I was trying to envision all these unseen forces. People are so afraid what's going to happen. What happens to something when something happens to it, it changes, then it changes into something else. And I don't have a say in this. To me, this is all up to the viewer. These are all done with Photoshop and Illustrator. Before what, during what, after what. They're very conceptual, but still, I have a real penchant for graphic design, and I incorporate a lot of it in my work, and can be enjoyed on any level, really, just color, shape, anything. Here's another one before, during, and after. I mean, what forces created these things? I have no idea. I just was fooling around with it. I do the best work when I'm having fun, when I really don't know what I'm doing, sort of don't know what I'm doing. It's like driving without any car lights on except your driving lights, your running lights. You can just see right in front of you. You just can't see anything else. You can only see in front of you. And that's the kind of risk I like to take. Here's another one. I mean, these were enormous fun to do during lockdown. Really had a good time with these. And friends would say, oh, there's a double image there accidentally. Well, anyway, friends would say, you know, what are you trying to say? And I say, you tell me what I'm trying to say. You tell me. You know, I don't like to be didactic. I like to leave things up in the air and to have an inherent sense of ambiguity and wonder. And these are really images that I've done previously. This one really bothered a lot of people that I showed it to. I don't know why. It just did. It's a narrative of whatever you want it to be. I don't really have a say in it. Sometimes I think I'm a channel to some really incredible demon somewhere. I don't know. And then I was thinking, what are the worst emotions that people feel, especially during lockdown, confinement? You know, they get angry, they get jealous, you know, envy. So I decided to do something called the 7 Deadliest Sins. These are a couple of them from this, the 7 Deadliest Sins, which greed is probably one of the worst. And these are all symbolic references. This could be actually a lot of different things. This one's envy, the green-eyed monster. And everybody feels that every so often. It's a very embarrassing situation to be envious of somebody that they have what you don't, and you have to really not show it. Very uncomfortable. So I decided to do a fun design based on that. And hatred, of course, is all over the place. And I decided to do a design that illustrates it or somehow develops it in terms of design. This one, I took a scanner and scanned my own face and made a grid from it. Anxiety. That I felt a lot during lockdown. There are times when the serenity I felt just went out the window, and I had nightmares. I was down at 9/11. I was there. I wasn't totally covered in dust, but I was there. I was buying art supplies, can I tell you? And so occasionally the anxiety, so I could get up in the middle of the night, no one's around, no one's bothering me. And I did these scans of my own face. You can't recognize me. I didn't want to be recognized. And I just put them, they're so grotesque, they're actually funny. But people don't think they're funny. It does definitely communicate to most people. I'd like to make a tapestry out of that. And fear, I sort of wanted to build a kind of mask-like thing, an impenetrable, scary mask. And that's an emotion everybody felt during lockdown. No one knew what the next day was going to be. People died from COVID. A lot of bad things happened. We all know that. So I decided, I guess I'm going over time. Do you have another minute or so, Barry?
You do. I just want to read some comments and then you'll go
sure.
back, okay? Babs Reingold says the drawings are beautiful and asks if you start with black paper. I'll come back to that. I just want to read the rest as we hear. And she also asks, what is dye sublimation? Jenna Lash says, the pandemic gave us quiet and space if we were lucky enough to feel safe, to experience and look at the world and our art in new ways. And I want to emphasize, we haven't really done any talks, maybe one on the pandemic, but the pandemic is the common theme throughout the last 80 talks. And in some way, ATOA has captured artists' reaction to the pandemic in sort of that way where you don't shine the light on it, but you let the inner light sort of be said, just as you're doing it now. And there are, the themes of isolation, changing studios, a lot of people scaling down work, but a lot of changes were forced that were really good because as artists, we like to evolve. And, you hinted at it at the beginning, Susan, it sort of forced you to reconsider, do I need to go out to a restaurant? What am I running around and doing in this city? And it made us go internal. So there was some very strong benefits. Susan Tiffin says, so diverse, wonderfully creative. Leah Paula says, very strong. Bab says, wonderful work, Susan. You mentioned graphic design. Did you work in the world of graphic design? So if you could answer a few questions, whether you worked in graphic design, work with black as a background, And what is dye sublimation? Is that when you give it like milk before bedtime?
Well, dye sublimation is a printing process where dyes are actually they're somehow melted into a metal surface. They're through a chemical process. It's a photographic process, but it doesn't have to only use photographs. It can use anything. And it's it by chemical means, it adheres to a substrate, usually aluminum, but it can be other substrates. There are different ways of doing it. You can Google it and you'll find out. It's a complex, very permanent process, and it's gorgeous and very expensive. That's I only do that for commissioned art where there's a budget and I can afford to hire the people that do it. As far as drawing is concerned, those black and white drawings, I started with black German etching paper, very thick, very beautiful, slightly textured, and I drew over it. I just drew over it extemporaneously. There was no sketch. They're fairly large. Well, not really. They're 16 by 20 inches, but they really have a big impact. They seem to be larger when people look at them. And the other thing is, no, I have not been part of the graphic design world. I actually have made a living doing commissioned art and public art. And it's a good thing that I do because I'm really basically unemployable anyway. So I'm glad that I make a living from my work. I don't know what I do otherwise. As I said, I'm strictly unemployable. I mean, what am I going to do? So sort of, I'm lucky, but I've had some very good years, and I've had some not so good years. Right
Well,
now,
public art is a form of being employed because you're working on commission and you're working with people and you oversee people. So it's a way of being employed. I mean, it's not a completely unemployable.
oh no, what I meant, I'm unemployable doing anything else.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't really teach, although I lecture. I do like to lecture very much on my own work and other people's work. And I like to give critiques, but I don't have a B job as such. Although, wait a minute, I did for a while do photo editing for advertising and publishing companies, advertising agencies. I did do that for a while, but I enjoy doing public art. I was thinking during lockdown, when the fires were raging, that freaked me out. The fires really, really freaked me out. So I figured, one of these days they're going to come right over into the cities. Cities can burn down. And so I did this montage from newspaper articles, and I put them together digitally. And this one, I really just went crazy with all kinds of micro and macro images of birth and death. And, you see this big ant presiding over a spiral galaxy, which is part of a fetus. Of course, I've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, as everybody has, that's over a certain age. And firebugs and cells splitting in two and everything. I mean, I sort of wanted to get a whole amalgam of life just being cascading together, going somewhere, but we don't know. So that was my kind of a vision of extinction. But I also at the same time wanted to show the beauty of nature as well.
Is that okay if this will be the last slide, Susan? I
Sure.
only say it because I have a board meeting right after this.
Oh, okay. I'll just go fast then. Here's more extinction, hurricane hitting a city, flood. It's very biblical. And this is my favorite one, Hot Town. Another one like that. Okay. These are all, of course, computer generated, and I also draw over them once they're printed. And someone said to me, "Oh, Susan, don't be so original. And I said, oh, don't bother me. So that's the end.
Let's see. Let's see. stuff.
There we go.
Very nice. And I will say that's a great
Thank you.
idea. I get people saying things that they just don't realize how wrong it is to say to an artist, but that becomes a word painting if you ever want to do it. It's nice to see you sort of take up that task. I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming and participating. This was a great night. All 4 artists, insightful, a lot of variety, and of course similarities. That's really what it's about. Keep coming to ATOA. Our talks are every Monday here at 6 o'clock. Go to our website. You can see anything as far as past talks, future talks. It's listed under calendar, and of course our YouTube channel. Thank you all so much. What a great night.
Thank you.
Thank
Beth.
you. Thank you very much. Take care. Get well.
People that we care about.
Thank you, Barry.
Believe that she is now included in his.
Thanks,
Peace out.
Barry.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night,
Barry.
everybody.
Good night.
Wonderful night.
Thank you,
Time-
thank you.
Time for cocktails.
Wonderful night. It was terrific.
Special thanks to all the presenters. Thank you.
Take care, Barry. We'll
Nice to
talk
meet
soon.
you. Nice
Nice to meet
guys.
you. It was a lot of fun talking to you beforehand, too.